Good evening. My name is Val Asnitz. I'm the planning director for Howard County. And I've been in that position right now a little more than a year and a half. And when I initially came here, one of the things that I started to look at were the development regulations for Howard County. And the planning department made a proposal that, based on discussions we've had with various citizen organizations, with the community and with the development community, that it would probably be a good thing to take a look at those development regulations and see what works and what doesn't work and what needs fixing. So the county executive was kind enough to support us in that effort, and we've hired a consulting firm, and we're excited about embarking on this endeavor here. We think that Howard County's zoning code and subdivision regulations do in fact need a fine-tuning. Our consultant described them as kind of barnacles that are created on the bottom of a ship. They've been growing for some time, and it's a good time to take a look at the development regulations and really see what kinds of changes need to take place. So with that, what I'd like to do is introduce Mr. Kilman, County Executive.
Sorry, I've got a late.
Thank you very much, Val. I appreciate that, and I appreciate your leadership and what you've done at DBZ, and I also want to make sure I acknowledge the deputy, Amy Gowan, is here too. Thank you, and other folks here from DBZ. Certainly also want to acknowledge Councilperson Mary Kay Sickey is here. Thank you very much, Mary Kay, for being here. And just welcome. This is a long time coming. We are here tonight to begin the listening process and to begin working with you on how we can try to make things better. We've heard from many of you that our zoning and land development regulations are too complicated, cumbersome, and difficult to understand. And that goes for all of us. Much of this is due to the fact that our land use challenges have evolved as the regulations haven't. And so we have to get them updated. And so tonight is just the first of an input session as we kick off this important effort. I know that over the next 2 days there are going to be 16 meetings to hear from different stakeholders and some folks in the public about what works and what doesn't work with the regulations and how they can be improved. But as I said, this is just the beginning of a multi-year effort. We have retained, as Val said, Clarion Associates to be our consultants on this first phase, which is the assessment of our regulations. Clarion is a nationally recognized land use consulting firm that has extensive experience across the United States and has produced over 100 comprehensive code updates themselves. They are leaders in the zoning best practices and sustainable development standards. We're excited to work with them and about the experience and expertise they bring. Now, I have asked a number of individuals to serve on a steering committee to provide guidance on key issues throughout this process. And I would like to announce the steering committee members tonight. I know some are here with us, and thank them for their time and their willingness to again serve. Many of them have served in other capacities as well to help us make it a better place. Those members include, I know Susan Garber is here, Paul Scowney, Joe Lankos is over there, Ted Mariani, Grace Babasic, Dick Lombardo, Cole Snorf, Drew Roth, Jane Demmer, I know Jake's here, Lynn Moore, Lisa Markovitz, and Steve Hunt. And I really want to thank them, and for those who could come out tonight, you're doing us a great service by being part of that steering committee. We're proud to kick off this project in Columbia, and I feel it's even more appropriate as we celebrate the 50th year of Columbia. So as Columbia advances, and we want to make sure that we have the right tools in place to continue the progress that has already been accomplished. And now I get an opportunity to introduce the person that will be kind of leading this effort. Don Elliott is a director with Clarion Associates, the national consulting firm I just talked about with offices in Denver and Chapel Hill. Chapel Hill. Good luck, didn't I? And also affiliate offices in Chicago, Philadelphia, and Cincinnati. Don's practice focuses on plan implementation, zoning, development regulations, and international urban development. He is the author of A Better Way to Zone and co-author of The Rules That Shape Urban Form and The Citizen's Guide to Planning. He also serves as a member of the Denver Planning Board. Don holds a master's degree in city and regional planning from the John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University, a Juris Doctor degree from Harvard Law School, and a Bachelor of Science degree in Urban Planning and Policy Analysis from Yale University. Can't go to a good school, huh? But I've had a chance to meet Don several times. You might remember, Don came not so long ago and talked about some of the development issues, and I think he put a flow chart. I think we were at the Wild Lake State Council one night, and he put a flow chart up showing how complicated things are. They don't have to be that complicated. We need to make sure that we have regulations and rules that the citizens, as well as those in the development industry, and everybody else can understand, and then we can make sure that everybody doesn't have to wonder what's happening. And so that's why it's so important that we have this meeting tonight. So with that, I'm going to introduce Don. Why don't you come forward, and let's welcome Don.
All right, thank you. Thank you all for welcoming me. Thank you, Mr. Gilman and Val. We're excited about this. I want to talk a little bit tonight about the scope of this project, about how you can get involved, about what it is and what it is not, what we're trying to do when we haven't decided what direction to go in. But basically lay out the framework of a little bit of who we are, a little bit more depth than my introduction, a little bit about what phase one is, how we're going to phase it, and then most of the time talk about how you can get involved. And then, this is short, guys. I can count them. I think there are 11 slides here. It's a short presentation. The idea being to hear from you about what you would like to have happen or what you absolutely do not want to see happen in Howard County, whether it's Columbia, whether it's the West, whether it's Route 1 or 40, wherever it is. So I'm going to try to draw you out. I read through again the development regulations today, and I'll tell you the 3 words that I wrote most often in the margin. One was, I don't understand it. One is, why here? Because a lot of stuff is hard to find, and I just couldn't figure out why is that. I understand what they're trying to get. Why is it here? And the other one was simply, why? Obviously, there's a lot of great character. It's a very diverse county. There's a meaning, there's a reason why this was adopted. And I got to tell you, in some places I looked at it and I kind of said, I don't get it. I don't really understand what this is trying to achieve here. So all of those are just examples of what we want to try to draw you out of tonight. So let's get through with my short talking part. To just build a little bit on my introduction, Clarity Associates is, we've done a lot of this. This is what we do. We do not represent developers getting development approvals. We work with cities and counties around the country. We have done, actually we've done 186 the last time I counted zoning update projects for communities, but more than 100 of them are a complete rewrite over time. I'm looking at the middle bullet there. One of the interesting things about Howard County, you've got the new town, you've got Columbia, truly unique in the whole country. You've got urban corridors, you've got interstate corridors, you've got the West, you've got agriculture. In places, and that's exciting. You've got a lot of different characters that you want to protect and allow to grow organically if they need to grow. But it makes it hard because there's so many different places. We like to work in places like that. Sometimes we call them multi-character counties. Sometimes, if they're having trouble, we call them bipolar counties. You know, there's this group over here, there's that group over there. We're both trying to achieve legitimate goals. And we do a lot of work in best practice regulation. This slide kind of shows some of our publications. Phil mentioned A Better Way to Zone. That was a book that I came and spoke here in Columbia about a couple of years ago, talking about why it doesn't have to be so complicated. I love to ask the question, what are you trying to get here? That's the point is, what are you trying to achieve? A lot of what strikes me in the current code is that it's repetitive and it's not, I could kind of tell what you were trying to achieve, but it seems to have gotten lost in the text of the process along the way. These are some examples of work we've done. Once in a while, since I'm from Denver, I get questioned, well, what do you know about us? And the answer is, I know what I've read. I've read the plan, I've read the code. I've met some of you, I've driven around the county twice, but obviously, I'm not an expert. But we have done a lot of work on the East Coast as well as the rest of the country. You saw the map. We're working right now with your neighbor in Sturgis County to rewrite their development regulations, and they are very complex, as yours are very complex. And so we have done work in Maryland. Again, we love to do best practice research. We love to publish it. We like to talk to people about how other people are achieving the same goal, usually in a clearer way or a way that's easier to understand. This is our team. Once again, even though we've done 100 of these things around the country, we're not a big firm. There are 18 of us. About a third of them in Chapel Hill, about 2/3 in Denver, and this is who's going to be working on this project. I'm going to be working on it. Lisa Steiner, raise your hand, is here from the Denver office with me, and Eric Renzel is a graphics expert. We try to use flow charts, we use charts, we like to use graphics, we like to use pictures and illustrations, which often can convey the the intent a whole lot clearer than a bunch of text. And so Eric, that's what Eric does. So the three of us, within a firm of about 18, will be the people working on this part of the project. Now, we're just starting, as Mr. Kittleman said, as Val said, we're just starting. What I came to do tonight was to listen. But I want to tell you what often happens, since we've done these in a lot of contexts, in a lot of places around the country. One of the things that came up over and over when I started talking with the staff about the development regulations was they don't seem to be connected to our planning goals very well. You have a new comp plan, and you don't, and there are myriad ways in which the regulations could help implement those policies that I don't think are in there now. So you could tell this first part of this is, I'm not going to tell you what the answer is. I'd be surprised if the answer wasn't, look, we spend time doing these plans. How can we make them turn into the actual decisions that happen down the road? I work in a lot of places that love to plan, but they never get around to this part of it, which is trying to align their regulations with what they were trying to get at in their plans. That's what I've decided to spend my career doing, is to say, you got a great plan? Great. I used to write plans. Now I don't. I figure out, okay, that's your great plan. How do we get it to happen on the face of the earth? And you've got, again, lots of different character areas. Once again, I'm here to listen, but often what we are told when we start this process is, what are you trying to get out of this? And obviously it's formatting, it's user-friendliness, it's context-sensitive regulations. I'm sorry, I had a typo in there. Efficient approval processes. You know, I have not been told to speed it up. I have not been told to slow it down. But the point in most jurisdictions is you'd like to get good decisions as efficiently as possible. I don't believe in delaying things just to delay them, and I certainly don't believe in rushing them through. But what I actually like to work on the parts of codes that have to do with, okay, that's what you're trying to do. What's the process of citizen engagement, of referring the application around and getting comments on it? How do you get good feedback on that as efficiently as possible? And I'll tell you for several reasons. A, I actually believe in local government. I actually believe it's a very valuable part of what makes America America. And you're paying taxes, and you might get the most value out of it as possible. And that doesn't mean you slow it down, doesn't mean you speed it fast. It means you use it wisely. You try to figure out what input you need to make a decision, and then set it up to do that. Mr. Kittleman was right. I put up a flow chart when I first looked at your stuff. Some of your stuff is very complicated. Very, very complicated. Now, I'm willing to listen and be educated as to why that's necessary, but my initial reaction is lots of places create wonderful communities and preserve wonderful communities with a simpler process than that. Why does it need to be that simple? So streamlining, efficiently, trying to clarify how this is going to happen. I'll tell you, we circulated some notes to the staff already and said, do people understand how this works? And I got a couple of answers back that said, well, the developers seem to understand how it works, but the citizens have a hard time following how this works. And so that's my view of that is I want to be clear. The steps in the process and the points of engagement to be clear. Design, obviously true. It's an award-winning miracle of the community, Columbia, and the county is really unique. The question is how you preserve that over time. And then sustainability. I don't think I've worked in a community in the last 15 years that didn't want to be a part of encouraging more sustainable development. And we can talk about what that means. Lots of the word sustainability is a broad umbrella, means a lot of different things to different people, but most citizens I know would like to think of their local government as promoting more sustainable development in one of a myriad ways that zoning actually can do. So I'm only putting these up. These are not my goals, they're not the project goals, these are common goals that we are asked to do when we get into this. I want to be clear, the reason we have to put it up here is I want to be very clear what this is and is not right now. This is a development regulation assessment. We have been only hired to review the plans, the regulations, the cited documents. You have manuals that are actually used in a quasi-regulatory way, but they're not really part of the code. They're subdivision. And review them and give you our advice as to how they could be stronger, how they could be better linked to the community's planning goals, how they could be more efficient, how other people are achieving what we think you're trying to achieve in a simpler or clearer way, and to show you a structure that we think is clearer and will help people find their answers better when they need to go. Either, can I do this with my property? Can he do that with his property? What about the vacant lot down in the corner? Can they do that with their property? My view is that, I mean, what you want is for citizens, people to get quick answers to that question. A lot of that has to do with how you structure the code. Your code is really old structure. You're not unique. When I read it, I kind of read it and I said, aha, I know when this was written. I can tell by the carbon dating. I can tell when this was written by the way it's structured. So, but there are much better and clearer ways to structure. So these are simply mostly to pique your interest. I'm hoping to provoke some questions. Yes, Don, we want that. No, Don, don't know why you flew in from Denver. We don't want that. But I'm showing you this. And we haven't set the goals for the actual update. That's what we're going to be doing for the next year. So here's the timeline. It's pretty simple. It goes for up and from now until the beginning of 2018, and you can see there are kind of two parts. One is kind of kicking it off. We've been out here a couple times. We've reviewed as many documents as we can. We've met with staff. As I told you, we've circulated lists to staff. What bugs you? Usually when we get hired, there's a lot of staff people who have long lists in their desk drawers about the things that bug them that they wish somebody would fix. So that's where we are right now. And finalizing how we engage folks. Now, there's a website up on the county's webpage now, as of today, I think, if not then yesterday. And there will be, as of tomorrow morning, a draft, a citizen engagement plan up there talking about the various ways we're going to reach out. I'll talk more about that in a minute. Then we get going right. So we have 16 meetings in the next couple days. That is the beginning. It's not the end. We will take comments any way you want to give them. There is a comment button, comment sheet on this project part of the county's website. And we love it if you click on there and tell me whatever you didn't have a chance to tell us tonight, or say it again. I told you last night, Don, I'm the guy who said this. I'm telling you again. I want to make sure this happens. So there's a comment version there. There's a way to get everybody who wants to be on the email list there. If you signed in tonight, you're on the email list. You'll have to get yourself off because we want as many people on as possible. So if your neighbors are not here tonight and you want to click on that button and add yourself to the list, it's an open-ended email list. Whenever we come in, whenever we have a draft document, whenever we have something to share as to our thinking, whenever we're going to come back to have another round of meetings, that people who are on the list will get an email. And that's everybody who says they want to be on the list. When you show up to the meeting, you're automatically on the list. That's on the county's website. So what we're going to start off with is a lot of interviews, and then we're going to do online surveys, trying to pose questions about, we're trying to draw you out. What about the zone districts? What about the landscaping standards? What about the street standards? What about the lighting standards? What about the dimensions and the height and the density of what's going on? To try to draw people in and ask people to fill out surveys too, online surveys. We then will prepare a staff draft of the document called the Diagnosis and Annotated Outline. Diagnosis is a combination of, well, we heard loud and clear that this is broken and needs to be fixed. Plus, no one told us this, but we got to tell you, other counties that have this type of an area or this type of a planning goal use a different tool to get it. We think you should consider a different tool to get there. So, the combination of what we hear and what we know from working in counties all over the country, in terms of a list of what needs to be fixed, and then an annotated outline that says, and here's how we think you ought to restructure. So that's usually 20 pages, 25 pages. But it basically goes through the structure of the code and says, this stuff is fine. Nobody complained about it. We're pulling it over as it is now. It's just easier to find it in the right place. This stuff ought to be revised and followed in a narrative version. We're not drafting, but this needs some new tools like X, Y, and Z. This section is a new section, and we were told needs to be done. Here's a, oh, by the way, and this section, which is currently there, was deleted because we got a better way to do it, or everybody agreed it ain't working. We've got a different tool to get there. So that annotated outline is not just bullets. It is a little bit of narrative. This is new, this is fixed, this is old, this is reorganized, and that's what we're paid to do in the next 12 months. That is all we've been hired to do. The county intends, I think, at that point, to issue an RFP to actually revise the zone. That'll obviously, by the way, we'll do the staff draft of that. Every document we do staff draft because no matter how hard I try, I make mistakes. We thought we understood the red line process. We thought we understood, conceptual sketch plans. We thought we understood this, but we got it wrong. Staff said, glad we caught that before they went out and embarrassed themselves. So We do that to try to figure out, to avoid making mistakes and getting something to you. You can see on here, public draft happens later in the year. So I'll talk more about our next visit, but basically at the end of that time, we'll decide, do you want a work plan? Do you want a step-by-step, do it in this order, or is that enough guidance? And the goal actually here is to finish this up at the beginning of next year and take a break. So that one way or another, we've completed the work, and come back, obviously, and do another round of meetings to get your reaction, another round of online surveys about what you think about that document when it comes out. So there'll be another round this summer, there'll be another round when that is issued. The goal is to get that out in public discourse, but not let it overlap the election process. We kind of let it sit there, and then I think the county's intention is to go out for an RFP, a request for proposals, and ask firms like ours to bid on actually doing the rework. And often what will happen is we do the diagnosis and annotated outline, and the county says, good, 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 actually we don't agree with page 17, don't do that. Actually we do agree with this, we don't agree with that. 9 times out of 10, 95 times out of 100, people love it and they say, do that. That's not casting stone, because always when you try to actually follow your roadmap and actually restructure the code, you run into unexpected things. Wow, this is harder to do than we thought. This can't be done this way. So you come up with other plans. But that's the roadmap that whichever consultant you hire, we will bid on it. I'm almost certain, unless you want us out of town. We will ask to be permitted to do that, but the county will have a competitive bidding process, and they'll choose whatever they want to do that. And I will guarantee you that even though you have a good roadmap, it'll change along the way. Things happen, then it just turns out, wow, you did what you said, and it's more confusing than we thought. Let's do something else. But that's the roadmap we're going to go out, and that's what we've been paid to do. We have not been paid to actually draft the new regulations.
We have also not been asked to remap the county. This is not part of those processes, but this is the foundation. If you have done a complete thing and said, please, we want to hire somebody to redraft the codes, and hey, we've hired Clarion, we would say, this is the first thing you do. First thing you do, get a diagnosis and annotated outline, get some agreement that that is where you want to go. Then we'll start writing so we don't waste your money. So whether it's us who do phase 2 or you choose another consultant, probably, and we've done this before, other consultants have done the analysis and then we get hired to actually draft the code. But that's the idea. It's a foundation, it's a roadmap. Here are the next steps. We keep reading more background information. You have a lot of documents that relate to land development regulation in Howard County. Keeping the website up to date, posting the things like the citizen engagement plan, doing more stakeholder interviews. As we've said, we've filled out the next 2 days with as many stakeholder groups as we can.
I know we'll miss some. We defer to the county to try to set those up. But if we miss you, we'll catch you on the next trip, or we'll do a phone interview, or we'll get some other way to do it. We can't fly out here all the time. But the point is, just as the email list is open, anybody can join at any time. If there's a stakeholder group that feels they've been overlooked, contact the county, we'll set up a phone interview, we'll set it up for the next time we're out here, one or the other. We go through all the public comments we have. I will say this, the website is set up so that your comments go to the county. They send them all to us. I've never had a problem with this in terms of open lines of communication. I've never had a case where the county screened it, didn't send us the comments that they didn't want to see. They'll send them on to me, and I am completely confident. But I will tell you this, but I don't like comments coming directly to me that you wouldn't let the county know. That's not fair to them. They're managing the project, they're your local government. So if you send me a comment and you rag on the county, be aware, I'm going to copy them and send it over to them. So don't do that. So send it to them, keep it clean, be strong, but keep it clean because they're going to send it to me. But we just can't have side conversations going on here. This is a group effort to decide what to do. It has to be strictly on them. And then we begin the drafting process, which will go this summer. So next steps, I think we got, the next step in this is that we will do just the steps I mentioned, and then we will start drafting. I know that by early summer, we will have a bunch of questions, a bunch of key decisions. Do you want to go left? Do you want to go right? Do you want to go center? I got feedback saying this is terrible, get rid of it. We got feedback saying don't ever get rid of that. And we will need to come and process those with stakeholder interviews like this round. There will not be a drafting hand. By the time we come back sometime this summer, we won't have a draft in hand. The draft is going to be done by the end of the summer. And then it's a staff draft, and then we review it and try to make sure it's ready for prime time. It's good stuff. But so next time when we see you this summer, will there be a draft? No. We'll be trying to meet with as many people who will listen to us to try to get their opinion about some of the key directions that we will lay into the foundation. Yes, that's what you're going to be doing. So I think, unless I have forgotten something in my shtick here, we're ready for questions. I'd be happy. Let's do this first of all. Before we get substantive feedback on what you love or hate about your neighborhood or land development regulations, what you do or don't want changed, are there any questions about the scope of the project and what we're here to do? Yes, sir.
I have 2 questions.
Sure.
You talk about,
I'm sorry.
we really need to send everyone over to that mic if you want to comment, because we're recording.
I'll wait for you.
Okay? 2 questions. You talked about, you worked in Prince George's County. What was your biggest accomplishment in Prince George's County?
Prince George's County is not finished yet.
Okay.
We have done, the way we divided it is that we did an assessment, and then we did 3 parts of the code and put them together, and that has just been released, so it's not done. All right, I'll go out here. I think our greatest accomplishment is being able to keep everybody at the table and to be able to be straight with them about what's broken and needs to be fixed, even though that was sometimes unpopular.
Okay. And then you mentioned the comment button. What kind of feedback will people get? I.e., if I send you a comment, am I going to get feedback on that particular comment? How is the general public going to know what I sent? Are you going to, or whoever in the county, whatever? I think it's important that we get feedback on every single question, regardless of how dumb it may be or not, or smart. It's important, because we want to make sure that everything is included.
Okay. Normally, we do not comment on every comment because we're not able to include them necessarily. I think that is your request that we do it differently here and that we do a response on it.
I would really appreciate that, sir. Thank you.
Yes? That's fine. People can line up here.
Anybody that's over here, can you queue back up around to the other side, please?
But let's start with questions about the process so far, not the substance of things that people like or don't like about the regulations. We'll do that in just a second. Let's do the process first. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Kenneth Norton. I live in historic Ellicott City. And in terms of the scope of your investigation, there was a lot of talk about Columbia and the villages. I just want to let you know that there are a lot of people here from historic Ellicott City, and we had a big flood on July 30th last year. And historic Ellicott City is a very important part of this project, so we want to make sure that we're squeezed in there somewhere along with Columbia and all the villages.
That's fair. Yes, when we were out here last time, we drove around, they tried to show us all the different parts, including Ellicott City. I'm aware of the flood. There's a study, I believe, going on about responses to that study about Ellicott City, particularly in light of the flood. It's a good example of what happens in counties like this. Often there's some other planning effort going on or some other regulation effort going on at the same time. We intend to pay attention to that, and if there are recommendations made about how to improve that situation or reduce the flood risk in the future, we'll take them into account in the ultimate diagnosis and indicator.
Just to be clear, I wasn't referring to the flood, I was referring to the scope of your investigation. Don't forget us.
No, we won't. Go on.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name's Travis Stoughton. I'm an architect and planner, and I've lived in Columbia for over 40 years. And on one of your slides there, which said policy considerations and tools, it said the slide omits any reference to the industrial parks in Columbia. This is very specific, I know, from a general thing that you're dealing with, but it mentions how to implement downtown regulations and how to implement village regulations. Those processes have been renewed very recently, but you never mentioned the industrial parks, which are a huge chunk of Columbia, and the future of those is unguided at the moment. Originally, as you know, Jim Rouse did the plan for Columbia and had employment centers, which were called industrial parks and now called mostly business parks. But they represent the biggest opportunity for change in Colombia after downtown and the villages. The residential areas are going to remain much the same. So the future of those industrial parks need to be part of your study. You can study the existing codes and put it apart, but it doesn't get to the real nub there, which is the uses in those parks are changing dramatically. And we need a new vision of what the uses in those parks should be. They could be multi-use buildings, then you've got residential in there, but then that dilutes the amount of area that's devoted to employment. And if you do that, now you've got 100,000 people living in Colombia that have to go elsewhere for a job. We should be concentrating on getting employment in the industrial parks. Right now, industrial parks are turning into retail centers, and that is the last thing we need. We've got much too much retail. So I hope that somehow will address the bigger picture there and not just deal with the details of the industrial park zoning as it exists. It needs a new vision and a bigger question for the county and the county executive for who is going to provide that vision for what those industrial parks ultimately should be.
Thank you. We are well aware that the industrial versus retail change of nature going on in parks. It's probably my fault for not saying that. We're well aware of that issue.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Melissa Metz. I have just a very simple question about the process.
Can you step closer to the mic?
Oh.
They told us not to.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay. I'm in the middle now.
Yeah.
Not to go spot.
Okay, great. So Gregory is about 6 inches in front of these stickers. So, yes, you say you're very open about getting community feedback, and that's wonderful. You said send the comments to the county. Who exactly? Do you have their email, or should it all be through the comment button on the website, or what?
The comment button on the website would be better because they're going to all be put in one place where they can sort them. I could give you an email address of an individual, but it's more likely to get lost at that individual's email address. So the comment button is the best way to do it.
Thank you.
We have content questions.
All right, any other process? Because we're already wandering into content. All right, let's open up for content. Let's do it.
Okay.
Oh, process. Okay. My mistake. Go ahead.
Hi there, I just have a quick question about the process. I was curious as to, you mentioned surveys. How are you going to determine whom these surveys will be sent out to?
What we generally do is create online surveys that we hope speak in citizens' language, not some geek language, not developer language, and just kind of draw people out. They're sent out to everybody who's on the mailing list, basically, and put in a responsible, we sometimes post them on the website, so anybody who accesses the website can get them. And anybody here who has signed up to be on the email list will get a link to those online surveys. If you have additional suggestions of how you'd like us to get them, I'll be happy to do it.
Yes, we found through working with the county that a lot of our citizenry is not a part of that because they do not use email or do not have access to the internet. A lot of elderly folks that we find do not have that access. And so we would request that if there was some sort of a mailer that could go out with a postcard, something that could be gone through snail mail, that would be greatly appreciated. But they can just fill out a comment and send it back in. A lot of my friends and neighbors will prefer that method. Thank you.
Thank you. Other process questions before we get into the content? Looks like not. You're up.
Okay. So Howard County is the only county within, Baltimore, Frederick, Prince George's, Anne Arundel, Montgomery County, Carroll. All of those counties have property maintenance zoning codes. We do not. We only have property maintenance codes for rental properties. So my next door neighbor's house is like a dump yard. And we are really anticipating and hoping that they add in a zoning code for debris removal from neighbors' yards. Is that going to be considered as part of it? Because I sent a letter to my county representative and he said, show up tonight and tell them what you think because this is the time to add it.
Okay. Usually once again, I'll take that as a comment that you'd like to have it added. property maintenance code for rental properties usually involve looking inside and making sure that the unit is habitable. So usually a zoning code does not do that for single-family residential properties. They don't go inside and see that it's actually good enough to rent out to the public. But they usually do include yard debris, waste, rubbish, long weeds, boarded up buildings. So the external parts of the site maintenance that have to do with what most people would call nuisance is often included in a new set of regulations. And I will take your comment that you'd like to see that included in this.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Hello, I'm with the Mount Hebbard Orchards Community Association. I have a comment about a specific regulation that applies to new developments. There's a proposed residential development in our community of about 250 units, which would be more dense than the existing community. And as part of the adequate public facilities ordinance, a new development of that size is required to make an estimate as to traffic impact of the development. So that sounds good. The part that made no sense to me at all was that they only have to assess the impact of traffic within a radius of 1 mile. So certainly there are a lot of areas within the radius of 1 mile, adjacent communities, little courts and dead-end streets that will not be impacted at all. What will definitely be impacted is the routes to and from the major thoroughfares. So I think
more than a mile away.
yes, and our neighborhood is slightly more than a mile away, and people driving to State Highway 29 will go right through our neighborhood, and it's already very congested. It takes 5 minutes to get out of our neighborhood at rush hour. I would like to see that changed to be, they need to make an assessment to the nearest interstate or major thoroughfare.
Okay? That's a clear statement, clear request.
Hi, my name's Angie Porter, and I chair the land use committee for the St. John's Community Association, which has been an established community since the late 1950s, of almost 1,000 homes in Ellicott City. And looking at your one of your earlier slides, which had sort of overall goals, implement Plan 230, 2030, etc. Most of them are sort of thing you couldn't quarrel with, but I have some reservations about your one statement about how you want to have flexible provisions. If anything, we think they're too flexible in two different respects. One is, as I said, we're an established community. We have a lot of established communities here in Howard County, and we think that this ought to be formally recognized as this is a finished community. Don't bollocks it up by letting people put houses in their front yards, as they've done in my community, and ruin the aesthetics of what used to be a lovely place, as well as ruin a lot of our streets, etc. The other thing is flexibility in terms of there are way too many, it's way too easy to get exceptions, to get variances from this, that, and the other. There are also way too many special conditional uses. For example, probably some people don't even realize this, just about any place in a traditionally zoned area in Howard County, single-family home, you can divide it into 2 apartments. You can double the density of the community. That kind of flexibility isn't desirable, and we hope you would try to mitigate that and eliminate a lot of those kinds of uses.
Okay, that's very clear, and I think your concern is primarily for established neighborhoods, places with
At
fixed
this point,
character
yeah,
that are
you
not.
move into a neighborhood because it has a character, we should be able to keep it.
Okay, clear. That's clear too.
Good evening. My name is Deborah Anderson, and I live in the relatively new community of Waverly Woods West. It's still under construction. And what I'd like to speak to this evening and have you focus in on is what our community believes is the disparity in the application of zoning requirements as it applies to where the manuals actually overlap the zoning requirements, and the building requirements and the lack thereof in age 55 and better communities such as ours, where we got into it knowing full well that the roads were private, for instance, However, we didn't realize that even though they were private roads, they didn't have to be built to county specifications. And I'm no stranger to the whole planning process. I'm relatively new to Howard County. We've been here 4.5 years. Previously, we lived in Baltimore County, where I was quite active with the planning office. And so when I read through regulations and I read through a landscape manual, and I literally can list it all down, and I can say, okay, fine, under these circumstances, this must be applied. I truly expect those same regulations to be in effect, whether it's a privately held community or whether it's 100% public. Because what's in writing should be applied uniformly across the board, and I firmly believe, and most of our community believes, that they're being applied in an arbitrary manner. And you've always got the yin and yang with the developers and the residents. But quite frankly, we believe that these are being applied to benefit the developer and to the detriment of the property owner. And I've been calling it legislated property damage since the first day I read the plans and then went through the manual, only to find out that the developer didn't have to follow anything that was in that landscape manual. So this is specifically what we're asking, is we're asking for the disparity to be stopped and for there to be uniform enforcement to all regulations. And if you're going to put a manual on your website, then it has to be in place for every single resident.
Okay. That's very clear as well.
And I absolutely agree with this lady here. I think that everything that she said as in response to the clapping should be put forward, because established neighborhoods are really the backbone of any community, and sometimes they're the stepchild that doesn't quite get the attention. That the Columbia Town Centers will always get the attention. You're going to draw the media, and everybody's going to say, oh yeah, we've got to run over here and we've got to take care of all their problems. Established communities really need the same kind of focus, and kind of what I've told the entire staff in the planning office is, when you build as many age 55 communities as Howard County has built, you get people with life experience and time on their hands. And this is what you get. You reach into that bag and you just don't know whether it's a rose on there. And sometimes it's not a rose.
No, but when you write zoning codes like I do, which is the unsexy part, I love it when you come out, and it's hard to get you guys, get people to come out.
Oh, believe me, I can pack the room. But
I understand your comments completely, and I got it. I want to point out there's a lot of things in your codes and manuals. That's one of the things that I wrote after I wrote why and why here, is legal status. What's the legal status of these manuals? And a lot of them conflict with each other. I mean, there are
Yes,
lots
they do.
of requirements there. It gets into the big issue for people who write zoning codes, a few proud of us, is that the should versus shall problem. You've got all kinds of things in the code and in the manuals that the code says should, and then the document that you should follow says shall. Is that a should or a shall? Or the code says shall, and the document itself says should. Is that a should or a shall? We're right into every community. I'm only pointing out that there's a lot of ambiguity that probably leads to the inconsistent application that you're talking about.
yeah, my day job, I was a consultant, and I wrote personalized employee benefit communications. I know all about the shoulds and the shalls, and believe me, I looked for every disclaimer that I could find, and that's my problem with this. I can't find a disclaimer that says, under this set of circumstances, we apply these regulations, and under this set of circumstances, we don't.
Okay, got it. That's helpful. 6 inches in front of the stickers.
Right up to the chair.
Good evening. I'm one of the multi-generational Howard Countyers. There's many around, and you can't shake a stick without hitting one of us. And with that said, I see you're doing PG County, where my family first arrived in the 1600s, and many historic resources are preserved in PG County. We have not seen the same in Howard County. There is a very opportunistic zoning effort going here. We have a lot of spot zoning, a lot of swaps, a lot of exchanges of density, a lot of creative ways of creating infill and opportunities that are going on. And these are putting an excessive amount of pressure on transitional areas and making it in areas because of fiduciary responsibility and other reasons, that families cannot stay in their own communities as they have been for generations. They're being forced and priced out. I've worked on committees for safety, which have regulations that we're still debating right now. We have historic resources that are in jeopardy right now. We have 3,000 historic residences in Howard County. That's about 3%, and most are in jeopardy right now. Because of this opportunistic zoning, we're really putting lots of pressure on those historic resources, our environmental resources and steep slopes, and as I mentioned, the aging in place has been very difficult because of this. We're looking for improvements that make it a place that we can live for another generation or more. And lastly, one of my big battles, which everyone knows in this room, has been APFO. We've been going through the process of making sure we have enough infrastructure to support whatever density, whatever growth comes out of this. Right now it's lacking, and we're hoping for improvements. But APFO is in zoning code. Is that something that you will be attempting to modify or take on or work in conjunction with whatever comes out of the latest updates?
Our contract doesn't include making recommendations on the APFO as part of zoning, but I understand that there is a study that's being run on the recommendations being made independently of our work. As with everything else, if the county comes to conclusions about a piece of the zoning that they have a separate planning process or a separate assessment process going on, and that gets to us in the next year, we roll that into our diagnosis and take it off. So, I have not been paid to do it. I understand it is being done. We will pay attention and incorporate it if we can.
Thank you.
Hi. I'd like to talk about the need to tweak the conditional use application. It does, and it's not a minor tweak, it's a significant tweak. A petition for conditional use, this is the current code right now. A petition for conditional use shall be submitted to the Department of Planning and Zoning and shall include, the list goes on and on and on, but one of them, 2B, says information regarding noise, dust, fumes, odors, lighting levels, vibrations, non-sewage solid waste, hazards, and this is the part that I'm concerned about, or other physical conditions resulting from the use which may adversely impact vicinal properties. So I raised privacy. I was told that that does not fall in that category. Well, what does other mean? So I went further, deeper into the code, and I found in paragraph 56 for utility uses, public, special conditions. The proposed location, design, method of operation will not have a detrimental effect on the privacy and quiet of the neighborhood and the safety of its inhabitants. So when I mentioned that to the members of the Department of Planning and Zoning, their response was, that's an oversight on our part. That needs to change. Okay? Unfortunately, that doesn't help my community because it's too late. So I'd like to see that change. Now, I'd also like to get a little bit more specific. In the conditional use application for communication towers in Howard County. An applicant for a new communication tower shall demonstrate that a diligent effort has been made to locate the proposed communication facility on a government structure or an existing structure, and it goes on, and the rule says the existing structures have to be taller than 50 feet within 1 mile of the proposed tower. Where I live in Howard County, and where many people live in Howard County, we are registered as RRDEO. In the RRDEO communities, the communications companies can put a tower anywhere they want. with the way the code is written right now. I can't find a structure 50 feet or taller. The only structures that are 50 feet or taller in Howard County in the RRDEO section are water towers and power lines. The power line companies are telling the communications companies, we no longer want your towers on our poles because it makes maintaining our poles more difficult. So no longer can you put the antennas on our poles. The water towers, the county is saying no more antennas on our water towers. What's not in the code, but is clear, is that the schools are not allowed to put antennas on Howard County Public Schools. They will not allow that. It's not in the code, but that's an unwritten rule that Howard County has. So my question is, where do the communications companies find an opportunity to co-locate anywhere in Howard County outside of downtown Columbia that has high-rise office buildings? There are none, and it's a loophole that the communications companies are taking full advantage of, and the residents of our communities have absolutely no legal say whatsoever. My question is, if there is a county, and it says here that they must look at a facility on a government structure. So if there's a county-owned park, or a county-owned park and ride, or a county-owned post office that doesn't have a 50-foot structure already on it, I'd like to see the code change that the telecommunications companies must, not shall, but must build the tower poles on the government properties, not in residential communities.
That's very clear. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
No, well within the scope of what we're doing.
Good evening. My name is Lori Lilly. I would like to see this assessment focus on the protection of important natural resources in the county. In particular, two areas of concern are the Green Infrastructure Network, and Howard County's Department of Planning and Zoning has mapped this network of important ecological areas all around the county, and it has no regulatory teeth at all. It is only a planning level tool, and I would like to request that that be considered as some type of overlay with existing, or with your new proposed development regulations for protection, and if new development is to occur, for higher standards in terms of protecting that resource. The second resource is the Tiber-Hudson watershed that drains to Ellicott City, and this should be considered as a special protection area as identified by the Ellicott City Flood Work Group and the Ellicott City Community Advisory Group. For new development, redevelopment, and existing development, standards need to be increased across the scale, but the focus needs to be particularly on protection and limited development, if any at all, and with higher standards where it must occur.
Back with comments on climate. So the quality of life in our county is high. We consistently rank in about the top 10 counties in the country on quality of life of where to live. However, we have lots of concerns related to development. We are concerned about maintaining the quality of our school system and dealing with traffic on our roads. Schools are already crowded and traffic on certain roads is a big issue. The risk of flooding puts our properties and the treasure of our county, the historic district, and other places at risk. New development brings in revenue for our county in terms of fees paid by developers and property taxes. However, we are concerned that such revenues may not offset the substantial costs of building new schools, building transportation infrastructure, and building infrastructure to mitigate flood risk. You mentioned density. We're concerned that the county is becoming more dense and doesn't have the infrastructure to support it. This is especially in light of the Spending Affordability Advisory Committee report that finds that the report expressed concerns on potentially higher service demands and slower tax revenues. So we have several comments or suggestions on the development regulations. First, as many people here have said, the laws on the books should be followed, not necessarily providing additional flexibility. The use of conditional use permits should be eliminated, and the use of waivers that have recently been termed alternative compliance should also be eliminated. To mitigate flood risk in the watersheds and neighborhoods affected by the July 2016 flood and anywhere else where flood risk presents itself, there should be a moratorium on development in the Plumtree and the Tiber-Hudson watersheds until the flood studies are complete. Once those studies have been, and the model, the 2D hydrology model have been delivered, a citizen work group or panel should be established. No new development should be authorized in the watersheds until recommendations from those flood studies that are agreed upon between the county and this work group or panel are implemented. And for any new proposed developments, this work group or panel should run the model to examine the potential impacts on flooding before a decision is made to allow the development to move forward. Speaking on the adequate public facilities ordinance, you write that the process of updating that is ongoing. I was at the planning board meeting where they discussed it. There were a lot of comments and things that were unresolved, and the way forward on that is a bit uncertain, although perhaps there's more information I'm not aware of. The APFO should be revised to include a test for stormwater quantity or flood mitigation. Developers should be required to mitigate to 120% the impact of a 500-year storm as proven by a 2D model. The ability for developers, so APFO includes the ability for developers to move forward with their projects if certain existing tests, such as schools and roads, are not met for 4 years from the date of their submission. This should not be allowed, especially if the tests are not met. Then that means that the rules on the books are not in compliance, and there's no reason why that development should be allowed to move forward. And there should be consideration for considering for the 55 and better communities to make them subject to the APFO schools test, because as people move from existing homes in the county into the 55 and better communities, their houses are sold, and about 60% of new students in the school system come from sales of existing homes. And further, who knows if, let's say 20, 30 years from now, maybe these communities would no longer be 55 and plus. It's a bit uncertain. So thinking about the future. And then finally, the development allocations that are in Plan Howard 2030. You mentioned Plan Howard 2030 as one of the guiding documents for your analysis, but there's also a consideration that some of that might need to be adjusted. So in Plan Howard 2030, it situates historic Ellicott City, which is in the Tiber-Hudson watershed, in the highest tier of development allocations in growth and revitalization. So the Tiber-Hudson watershed should be removed from that highest tier of development allocations, and also the allocations for the Plumtree watershed should be reconsidered based on the risk of flooding. Further, the development allocations should be revised to incentivize stormwater quantity control, again flood mitigation, and low-density developments by giving developments that go beyond what is required in the regulations first priority for allocations.
Great, you look like you've written those down. Can you?
Yes, I will be sending them to you.
Thank you very much.
Through that button.
Good evening, I'm Beth Woodruff. I live in historic Ellicott City. I appreciate your time here tonight, and Mr. Goodman, thank you for being here and hearing us. I appreciate that too. I believe that the laws and the regulations and how we use the land that's available to us in the county should support our quality of life as well as safety. Public safety has to be a priority, and I have real concerns over the use of waivers and alternative compliance for things like building on steep slopes and too close to stream buffers. I live in the Tiber-Hudson watershed and survived the flood. My son and I, who's here tonight, were impacted dramatically by that event. And I never want to see another community in Howard County or anywhere suffer the same losses that my community suffered. I believe that if we are not diligent about the use of waivers and alternative compliance, we risk putting lives and homes at risk. And not just the new ones, but the existing structures as the debris from the collapsed building splits down the stream. We learned all too well how much you can lose and how quickly, and I would hate to see that happen again. Lives have been lost literally on my street, and I never ever want to see that. If we don't stop and perhaps even revoke some of the ones that have been approved, I really do have concerns that we will lose more people. To that end, I think the current regulations are a pay-to-play system. If you own a big enough parcel of land in Howard County, you can get away with a lot more. For instance, in my home, I can't open a store. I have to abide by the current building codes, and I can't open a turtle rescue. But if I owned a big enough piece of property, I could get around all of that, and I could. It's unfair, it's unequal, and it's not right for those of us who own homes or established lives here. Like you said, we bought our homes, we moved to this area, we made our lives here for a certain expectation, and we hate to see that ruined by unfair regulations. So in that respect, I am asking for the addition of a stormwater tax to any development that's being added to the area, especially in the Tiber-Hudson River, but there are flood concerns throughout Howard County. I would ask for a 2D model study for 120% retention in a 500-year storm. I would ask that you end the use of alternative compliance. And then finally, I would ask that you would end development in the historic districts to preserve the historic nature of the cities that exist currently.
I didn't introduce myself the first time. I'm Holly DeFrancis, and I'm one of the board of directors of the Howard County Association for Responsible Planning, or citizens group that represents over 1,000 members currently, located mostly in northern Howard County.
Can you get closer to the mic, please?
Sure. So I have a lot of comments, so please bear with me, and yes, I will be submitting further comments in writing, but I wanted to bring up a couple of topics. First and foremost, we found that the transparency of the approval process has been severely lacking, that I'm a lifelong resident of Howard County, as are most of the members of my group. And we have often been surprised, let's say, by developments happening that are offered waivers, offered conditional uses, something that is being used for a purpose that it was not originally zoned for. So many of us bought into these communities with a certain understanding of what would be allowed and not allowed within our community, and that's been turned on its head, quite to the surprise of residents. And I, like many of the other members of the group, found out that the process for those approvals is very opaque. It's extremely in the favor of the developers, that they do know the process and the citizens do not. And they're often left individually scrambling to try and understand those processes and then adequately communicate their opposition to it. So we would like to see increased simplicity and increased communication on the part of the county as to what is not allowed and what the process is going to be. That being said, I'd like to move on to some conditional use issues. Conditional uses have been a fairly new thing within this county. They were not in place when I was younger. And this process has allowed a lot of development that residents have been unhappy about. I would like to encourage eliminating conditional uses, or at least eliminating conditional uses that increase density in areas. An increase in density should require actual rezoning. It's much too easy for places to be pushed through the process very quickly without proper input from residents. There has been an effort to increase some of the transparency and increase some of the opportunities for citizens to comment and for experts to comment. One of them I'd like to commend is the Design Advisory Panel that has newly been instated by Mr. Kilman. We greatly appreciated that. However, this Design Advisory Panel currently only submits comments to the Department of Planning and Zoning, and it does not have any actual weight. There's no teeth in this. We were very happy to see the astute commentary of this panel of experts. However, we're concerned that their comments are not being given the adequate weight. So we would like the Design Advisory Panel comments to either turn into its own approval process, that they have to have an actual approval from the Design Advisory Panel before moving forward with the plan, or we would like the Design Advisory Panel to issue an opinion, adverse or in favor, and have the Department of Planning and Zoning in some way bound to that decision. We also would like to have a county-wide look at the location of 55 and over communities, that we have found that there has been a concentration of the location of them because of what land has become available at what time. I live in the Route 99 corridor, and right in our area of Route 99 and Route 40, which are parallel small highways, we found that there is an extreme concentration of these developments. That seems unsustainable because it's concentrating all of these folks that are going to be vacating their homes in the same place, creating the echo effect of young people buying in with children that then fill up the schools in those districts. It's also an issue because these locations are being picked without any kind of regard to the facilities around them and accessibility to those facilities. These locations are often not walkable. They do not have access to public transportation. They are not close to any kind of restaurants or medical facilities. There's nothing there for the residents to be able to access. And if the idea is for senior living, we would like the quality of life for those seniors to be increased. So what we would really like to see is we'd like to see the county look on the scope as a whole and decide intentionally where these locations should be, instead of just allowing whoever wants to make one put it on the first parcel of land to become available. We'd like there to be intent there. We also would like a countywide look at the use of parkland. Currently, there have been a lot of swaps of where parkland will be, where open spaces will be in exchange for density. And the northern part of the county, not to harp on it, but we got a little robbed. We do not have adequate park facilities north of Route 40. And we would like to see the county invest in some sort of an equal distribution of parkland. Moving on, we find the APFO process, which had mentioned has been looked at, is not effective. The county recognized that it has not been effective and made some sort of effort towards revamping this. That effort, to our understanding, has already taken place. There's been an advisory panel convened. They proposed their recommendations, and those recommendations were sadly lacking. For those of us who attended that hearing, there were no meaningful changes in the APFO made, and we are completely dissatisfied with the new proposals. We would like to see that process opened up to the citizenry in general for comment, and we would like to see a better look taken at it, whether that happens in another committee or it happens as a public forum. We would like to see those recommendations increased, because the commentary that was submitted at that public hearing from the general public was incredibly negative. And with the APFO, we would like to see inclusion of mitigation of stormwater management. I'd like to echo the comments of some of the people previous, that stormwater management has become a county-wide issue. That we have seen floods not just in historic Ellicott City, but in the surrounding area, and other areas that haven't really come to light. And so I think in keeping with our sustainability initiative, we really need to make sure that any development that increases density has an adequate stormwater management system. And we would like to see it manage a 500-year storm instead of a 100-year storm, as those 500-year storms are becoming more and more frequent, to the tune of a couple a year. We also want to encourage sustainability in some other ways. There has recently been some initiatives in the state of Maryland to encourage solar power, which is wonderful. But most of this solar power comes in the form of solar farms that are located in rural areas of the county. There has been some pushback from rural residents that do not want the eyesore of a big solar farm on farmland. It's not really farming. So what I would propose instead is we would really like to see the county encourage solar farms and solar power in areas that are already developed. We have wonderful flat rooftop spaces all over Columbia, all over the denser, more industrial parts of the county. We would love to see an incentive program or some sort of requirements of new construction that they include solar power in their plans. And we would We would also like to thank you for being here. We appreciate you patiently listening to all of our comments. We will certainly have more for you, and we would like to encourage you to put together periodic summaries of what your progress has been and what recommendations you are getting from the community, if you could, that maybe you could publish it on the website or send it out to the email distribution list. One of our issues moving through dealing with the county has been sometimes we're in a bit of a roadblock where we don't know where we stand, we don't know what's happening, we just kind of have silence. And so if we could get some sort of periodic updates every couple of months or so, we would really appreciate that.
That's clear. I think there's several comments that go in the same direction. You'd like as much feedback along the way as you can.
Yes, please. Thank you so much.
I got it.
Don, if I may?
Yes.
My name is Chris, and I have two questions. This is an assessment of the regulations, and you indicated you're not going to review the subdivision regulations or the subtitles.
No, we are going to review the subdivision.
Can you actually enumerate specifically which manuals and regulations this study is going to review?
Well, I will defer to staff if they want the ones that I've run onto so far. You've got Route 40, you've got Route 40 manual, you've got Route 1 manual, you've got the landscaping manual, you've got at least one environmental manual, and I'm happy, anything that is referred to in the administration of the zoning or subdivision code, I think we need to be reviewing as to whether that stuff should be in the regulations, should not be in the regulations, and at least its legal status and its applicability clarified. Now, if there are more manuals you think I should have listed there, please listen for me.
Okay, that was a good answer to my question. The second question is, in your previous assignments, did you undertake audits of the application and administration of the regulations in the whole totality, so that you could get some sort of an assessment about how the regulations had been performing in an historical basis?
Usually what we do is to get as much as a county or a city that hires us, we ask them to give us a list of all the variances you've given, give us a list of all the conditional uses you've given, give us a list of all the adjustments of the waivers you've given. To the degree they have that, we kind of look at them and say, looks like you're giving a lot of these, can we get around, can we fix that in some way so we're not getting so many? But in terms of an audit, I do not usually follow a particular type of application through. We can do that. Usually I just try to rely on citizen input and staff input to say, here's the types of approvals and adjustments we are giving, and we use our knowledge to kind of say, that's an awful lot of those. You're going through a lot of those where you're waiving a lot of things that you shouldn't be waiving. So I deal with the data of what they've done. I usually do not call it an audit.
You don't call it an audit, but then you would summarize your findings?
We look at, yeah.
And would you do some sort of statistical sampling of maybe all the SDP approvals over a certain period?
Well, you're getting beyond, I haven't had that conversation with staff. I'll take your request that you'd like that to happen.
No, I didn't say I'd like it to happen.
Right.
I was merely trying to illustrate your methods.
I rely heavily on the people who use the codes or experience their impact telling me what is broken and me looking at it and saying, I don't know why that's so complicated, I don't know why you use that tool in that context. And so we do a lot of it in terms of statistical analysis of them. I generally don't, because usually there are unique circumstances in almost every development tool that goes through that make them hard to generalize.
What I meant is statistical sampling is really the basis. You can't pick every single SDP that's ever done. Are you also going to review the hearing examiner and Board of Appeals decisions?
I'll ask for that information, and we'll review what kinds of decisions they've been making and how they've been approving and not approving in what context, yes.
And then you will provide some of that data as it's relevant.
Well, the data is, my guess is the data is public, we can put it out there. I'd be happy to. The county has not told me that a large part of my job is the statistical analysis of the types of approvals. That's why I'm wondering, I think you'd like me to be.
No, I'm not liking or disliking.
Okay.
In a lot of jurisdictions, for example, they have annual reports that they make, and they summarize all the decisions they've made and these kinds of things. Unfortunately, I don't think we have the staff here to do that, but it kind of helps them guide how they're performing their jobs.
Let me talk to them about it. That's the best answer I can give you and see what we can do to make that more transparent.
Thank you.
Hi, My name is Bert Wilson. I actually have a business, a property, and I live in the Tiber Hudson Basin. I have a little experience from all sides of it. I'd like some action on the stormwater. And I've heard this before. I'd like some specific requirements about what can run off property. As I note that development does continue, and I don't think there shouldn't be development. I have a hard time with that. But I think that property owners and anyone who develops something should be responsible for the incremental volume that comes off their property and should stop it. The development regulations should be neighborly. And I think neighborly means you don't come in and ruin somebody else's property. And I think that has to be a key term in development.
Thank you.
That's my
That's
point.
very clear, and the on-site using site design to mitigate stormwater runoff is something that most newer codes take a more serious look at.
I would ask one question. I read the code a bit. It says 100-year storm. That's statistical. There can be 200-year storms within 5 days of each other. It needs to be a specific number, like how many cubic feet per linear foot per minute or something like that.
Well, I think you're kind of endorsing what our earlier speaker said. There ought to be tests required in order to figure out if it's stormwater.
Well, it shouldn't be a nebulous standard. It should be a specific standard. It's very objective.
Got it.
Hi, my name is Judy George. I am not unknown to many people in the county. I think that when you meet with some of these stakeholder groups, like the lawyers, who I've beaten almost all of them except for one in land use things, in my quest to make a better Howard County, really tired of the developer lawyer overreach. I think the unbelievable, like in the previous administration, the CRAs, the red lines, the just absolute, oh, whatever you want, is beyond unacceptable. And I know that we've made some course corrections, but it just doesn't feel like it's quite enough. The other thing that I want is more, we need more things about infill, because like I live on the eastern half of the county along Route 1, and they voted several years ago to increase density, but that just sucks. I mean, that vote sucked. I think we would admit that there is nothing good about the increased density that they voted to do, because there was no infrastructure to follow that. And so, you know, when you're talking about infill, you know, we'll get like 5 houses here, 10 houses here. That part just really makes people crazy, because the number of people that are churned, or little people that are churned out of that, the schools can't handle it. And way back when, way back when, before the little Pikachu was born, I was on a task force that showed, you know, oh, if there's a zoning thing, there's got to be a sign. You know, that was the big thing that came out of that one task force. Posting notices. And I can't tell you how tired I was, and even though I was on that task force, how absolutely infuriating it would be when the developer would post it. It was legally posted where nobody could see the sign. That has to change. And it has to be easier to find on the website. I mean, absolutely, I can't tell you how frustrating it is that I kind of know what I'm not doing, and I know that I know a lot more than a lot of other people, but if I can't find it, that's not good. I mean, somebody who's been doing this for as many years as I've been doing it, I should be able to go and just find it like that. And if I want to tell somebody how to find it, it shouldn't be a 45-minute tutorial on how to find it. It should be simple.
Hi, Joe Irwins. Are you doing urban renewal code as part of your scope?
Staff, am I doing urban renewal?
I asked one of them. She wrote it down.
Would you have a specific concern about it?
I have a lot of concerns.
Please,
And
tell me what they are.
Your Harvard degree is going to get
You know,
good use out of
it
it.
has not been, you can tell me, it has not been a topic of my discussions with the staff. They haven't said you're not doing this, they haven't said you are doing this. I've read the code a couple times. I have not focused on that section. So tell me what you'd like.
Right, that's because I guess Durban Knowles in Title 13, not 16.
I was going to say, that's why I haven't, good, and I didn't miss it. Good. Yeah.
I wrote a memo at the request of the county solicitor, basically explaining all these problems. Because Durban Knowles occupies a very unique place in the Maryland Constitution. It's adapted from Article 3, Section 61 of the Constitution, giving local jurisdiction to Durban Knowles. It was done in the early 60s before the county adopted its charter. When the charter was adopted, the codifiers of the code, according to the preamble in it, took all the executive functions that were in public local laws and gave them to the executive and gave all the legislative to the county council. The Constitution is silent on what to do with their renewal law because the Constitution specifically says that the charter provisions of the local jurisdiction, the adopted charter, does not apply to them for their renewal law. And only the General Assembly can enact their renewal law. So when they enacted it, they went and started editing it to start with because it referred to the county commissioners, which functions as a legislative and as an executive body. I'll go back to that. So the first thing they did, they divided up all those functions. They failed to follow one of their own rules, however, because when it said planning commission in the Durban law, rather than give it to the planning board that became the successor, they gave it to the Office of Planning, which now, to our current code, says the Office of Planning and their current urban renewal that's going on now basically has, if you read it the way it says, the planning DPZ takes their renewal plan for Long Reach, renews it for 60 days. For the council refers it to them, they review it for 60 days, and then they give a recommendation back to the council. That's rather circular, it makes no sense because they're reviewing their own work, rather than going to the planning board. So that's one problem. The next problem was when interest rates were sky high in 1980. Howard County, without authority, went and removed the cap on bonds that were in the renewal code, which the state constitution says that the General Assembly can put such restrictions on their renewal as they deem fit. One of them was a 6% cap on bonds. So the thing was messed up. I further realized that it makes no sense with all the powers functions that were divvied up between the executive and the council when, I guess last year, DPZ went to the council to try to get preliminary approval for Long Reach sale. And I realized you can't just divvy up the powers between the executive and the executive willy-nilly because they're making no sense and they're overlapping with other provisions in the code. And the General Assembly is the one that needs basically to fix this. As I said, you're going to get a good workout with your Harvard degree on that because there's not a lot of guidance on that. And as I said, the Constitution has a flaw of what to do when a county adopts a charter with a pre-existing urban renewal code.
Kind of interesting, Prince George's County has been able to identify a few problems with the state.
Prince George's County basically has their existence, but I looked at it as it's very similar to ours. They did not, however, remove the 6% cap on bonds, but I think they still have the same problem. Anne Arundel County in 1975 got the General Assembly to reenact and recodify their urban renewal. So to clarify some of it, because they had the same problem, they adopted a charter. And I think Howard County needs to do that as well. So that's
So you put that in your memo to the county solicitor?
Yes, I did.
Thank you. It's 8:25, we said we'd be done at 8:30, I'm willing to stay later, but is there anybody else who is not standing up yet who wants to get in line to participate tonight? This is the beginning, guys, it's not the end, so let's take the last two comments. Yeah.
I'll be pretty quick. My name is Bill Withers, and I live in one of the historic districts in the county. A belated process question. You made a comment when someone said something, I heard that, and then you got a room full of applause and you heard that as well. So is it valuable for input to be repetitive? In other words, I won't repeat all the things I agreed with tonight, but on the website as people enter, I mean, Are you looking for comments, are you looking for quantity of agreement?
I'd like to get a sense, several of the applauses tonight have given me a sense of what's valuable to this group and what you'd like us to focus on. It's not a straw poll. My opinion is based on what we hear in terms of problems. Now, once you say it once and two people say it twice, I get it, it's a problem. I'm happy to hear it 25 times, but I don't weigh it 25 times exactly. I get it, I can tell what people, we've talked about unpredictable outcomes, we've talked about non-transparent process, we've talked about flooding, I got it. So you don't need to, if you want to, that's fine, but I'm not counting votes.
Sure.
It's not a voting thing.
And
by the way, if you're sitting quietly and you disagree with the applause or disagree with the people, don't be intimidated. Get in there and weigh in that way too. I appreciate the heartfeltness of the applause. But if you're in the minority and you didn't agree, please comment anyway. There may be people who disagree with those comments, so please do.
that's a great point. In the Historic District, there is a Historic District Commission. I think people talk about it, largely advisory. I think that because of the sort of shrinking nature of these communities and the change and the waivers that have allowed infill development within them, it would be good if it falls within your purview to give that commission some teeth. I think a model to start with, and then you can come down from there, is the California Coastal Commission. It really...
A lot of teeth.
They give it a lot of teeth, and for that reason, people visit California to see the beautiful coast. They won't come here if the historic district is full of townhouses. Just to underline one other note, I think if there can be language for water runoff, some of this is stuff from even more than 10 years ago before I was here, but I've talked to residents whose properties have really been damaged with silt when they're downstream of development, sometimes just right across the street, and they've been told, whether it's true or not, that they have no recourse. So runoff as trespass, I think, is something that would be worth considering. Thank you.
Very helpful.
Hi, my name is Drew Roth. I'm the president of the Greater Elkridge Community Association and the Route 1 corridor in eastern County. One thing that we're dealing with is in the aftermath of the Route 1 corridor density increases in development, the public infrastructure and public facilities has not kept up with the need created by the new housing. We currently are a high school that is vastly overcrowded, and there's no actionable plan yet to build a new high school, and we are being told there's no place to build a high school in your community. We're going to build it somewhere else in the county, and you can go to high school over there. Now, I think that one of the things I think would be really good to try to do in this is to plan for public facilities holistically in the course of the overall planning. Right now, we do the zoning rules, but there's no mention in the big picture, in totality, of the facilities like schools, fire departments, libraries, etc., needed to support the resulting density, the resulting population from the zoning changes in aggregate. So as a result, we have an APA law that is reactionary and punitive for problems that one can anticipate when you look at the totality of how the land is zoned. And we wind up playing catch-up. This isn't just an Elkridge thing. The same thing can be said of the Columbia Town Center development, where there's 5,500 new residential units planned and no clue where the schools are going to be to support that population. So I think that would be something very worthwhile to work for us to try to integrate facilities planning, schools, et cetera, into the totality of the planning process in a proactive manner. Thank you.
Very helpful. Thanks everybody for being here. Once again, please file comments in the comment button on the website. Contact county staff. I told them, send them all to us. Don't screen them. I'm happy to have them there. Don't be intimidated if you were in the minority tonight. And if you want to weigh in and you were in the majority and you applied and you want to weigh in again, please feel free. We're having a lot of meetings over the next few days. If you have neighbors who were not able to be here but could be tomorrow or the next night, there are going to be 2 more public meetings. And we'll see you sometime this summer. Thank you very much.